Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Town Hall featuring the City Manager of Port Huron, James Freed. We want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be here today, and we'd like to take a moment to thank Enter Stage Right for providing this fantastic venue in the city of Port Huron. Yeah. For those who do not know me, my name is Thelma Castillo, and I'm the President and CEO of the Chamber. And one of the Chamber's pillars is advocacy. The Chamber prides itself on the hosting events where our members get to mix and mingle with their elected officials and appointed officials at the local, state, and federal levels. We're also priding ourselves on the establishment relationships we have with those individuals. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator and chair of the Public Affairs Committee, Scott Shigley, who is the VP General Manager at Liggett Communications, known in our community as Radio First. He has a BA in Communications. He is a past chairman of the Chamber Board and served 6 years on our board. He also serves on McLaren's Board of Trustees and is a past president for the Michigan Association of Broadcasters Board of Directors. Please welcome Scott Shigley to the stage.
Thanks, Thelma.
Since 2014, under the city charter, Mr. Freed has served as the city manager, chief administrative officer for the city of Port Huron. I have something in common with James. We both started working in the city of Port Huron in 2014. That's why it's so great. At the direction of the mayor and city council, Mr. Freed provides leadership to all city staff and oversees the daily operations of the city. He has a decade of leadership experience in both the public and private sectors. This gives him a unique perspective on local government as well as the needs of the business community, and that's what the Chamber is all about, the business needs. He holds a Bachelor of Science and an MBA, and he's also authored a number of papers on various topics. In addition to his former education, Mr. Freed has proven experience in economic development, which is very important to our city, community development, which is very important to our citizens, government administration, constituents relations, and many more things. He is married to Jessie, who's sitting right up here in front, and they have 2 wonderful daughters, Lucy and Annie. Please welcome Mr. Freed to the stage.
Scott, let me turn on this mic here before I forget that. The one thing I was not supposed to forget is the mic. All right, can you hear me okay? Excellent. Well, this year marks my 17th year in public administration in the state of Michigan. I've managed 3 communities in the state of Michigan, and it marks my 10th year as the city manager of Port Huron, Michigan. And it's been an incredible 10 years. Our community today is very different. It looks very different. It feels very different than when I first got here in 2014. When I look back over my tenure, I look at key moments in things that we've done, and I refer to them as decision points. Points in times when critical and important decisions had to be made, whether that was the multi-million-dollar utility deficits, unfunded liabilities that not only presented a clear and present danger to our children's future, but also a clear and present danger to our ability to deliver core public services. Economic development. We used to chase jobs. Now we chase workers. In 2014, we had somewhere between 17 and 20% unemployment. Today, we are at 50-year lows below 5% unemployment, which is incredible. Every single year for the last 8 years, the poverty rate has dropped. It's dropped down by more than 6 points. That's important because it's the hardest economic indicator to move is the poverty rate. And what that means is that moms and dads and hardworking folks are finding opportunities. They're able to build a better life for themselves and their families right here in the city of Port Huron because of the difficult decisions but necessary decisions that we made. I want to thank Regina and Brian for letting us use the Citadel Theater today. This was actually one of the original projects in downtown, which is a public-private partnership between the Witt family, the state of Michigan, and the city of Port Huron. The city of Port Huron provided what's called an obsolete property district. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation provided what's called a community redevelopment program, which provided $200,000 to help fund this project. Now it hosts 11 different productions a year, brings in hundreds to thousands of people in our downtown. It's pretty remarkable. So thank you for allowing us to hold this here, and for the Chamber putting this together, for Radio First and Scott and Thumb Coast TV for allowing us to broadcast this. I think it's important. I think it's important that the residents have the opportunity to ask questions of their city manager. And I think it's important that I hear the questions and receive the feedback, because candidly, it makes me do a better job. When I know what's going on, when I understand the pulse of the people and what their hopes and dreams and concerns are. So I appreciate you all for coming today. I have not had the luxury of seeing these questions in advance. I think this is a good idea. We're going to find out if that's actually a good idea. So we'll see what happens, but I look forward to taking your questions.
All right, I thought I was going to have to cut him off there for a second and just get the hook out right away. But no, James, first of all, thanks for doing this, and thanks, Thelma, for the chamber to host an event like this. I think, being in the public affairs side of things, I was just talking to James back before we started, and when James first got here, it was really important for us to get an update every year. James would come in and talk about some of the issues that we're facing in the city. And I think that this is just a natural way to kind of expand on that outside of just the board environment. So I appreciate all of you guys coming out here today, and I appreciate the questions that a lot of times when we do these things too, Thelma tells me she's going to send me questions, and then we get like one. And then it's the Scott Shigley show for an hour. So that didn't happen today. We have a lot of great questions. James, anytime that you have the kind of growth, whether it be infrastructure, enthusiasm amongst the citizens in your community, there are a lot of great idea people in our town, but that also certainly presents new opportunities and challenges as well. And one of the things is that we've had a great deal of investment in our communities, our downtowns and in Southside communities. What do you see as the city's role when it comes to attracting people to come to our area? What things do you think are really critical when we're doing that messaging to try and explain to people outside of our area what it is that's actually going on here?
So the question you asked is a question I wouldn't have got 10 years ago. The question 10 years would have been, what are you doing to bail out the deficits? What are we doing about the more than $140 million of unfunded liabilities that are plugging our city? What are we going to do about those? I go back to decision points. When I first got here in 2014, we're managing crises. And sometimes managing crises is a little bit easier because the mission's defined. Like, here's the fire, put it out. The mission is defined. We didn't get here by coincidence. We got here because difficult decisions would be made. So I think back to the mayor and council mayor rep and all the city council members for the last 10 years who have been put in positions to make really difficult decisions, but necessary decisions. Not every city in the state of Michigan is prosperous. Because if these decisions were easy, they would be. But most cities around the state are still struggling with unfunded liabilities. Most cities are still dealing with deficits. We took it head on. One thing I've learned in public administration is you can't solve the third rail of politics if you're too afraid to touch it. And the mayor and council had the courage to take on the utility deficits, to address unfunded liabilities, to not only ensure that our operational finances were stable, but that the promises we made to our firefighters and our police officers and our retirees were upheld and protected. Indecision, inaction is a decision. And delaying the difficult decisions, there's consequences. So I call it, when we had the workout period, when we're looking at the restructuring the unfunded liabilities and refinancing, you have to have a workout window for a glide path to a soft landing. And we were on the cusp of not having enough runway to do a soft landing. Thank God we acted. I look around the state of Michigan, and I know that there are communities who didn't make those decisions. And they are going to have to deal with that at a much stiffer consequence in the next 2 to 3 years than had they shown the proactive leadership that Mayor Rep and our council did over the last decade. And so the decisions we made created what I like to call vanilla ice cream government. All right? Government doesn't create jobs. Government doesn't create prosperity. What we hope to do is create an environment in which that's possible. And so that means we want to create a conducive environment where people want to, one, invest capital, feel it's safe to invest capital, and have predictable and stable public services. The reason why I use vanilla ice cream is because vanilla ice cream is the #1 flavor ice cream in America. Why? Because it's predictable and you know what you're going to get. In the city of Port Huron, we now can guarantee that we are going to have quality parks and recreations that have seen more than $3 million of new investment since our Parks and Rec millage has been passed. We can now guarantee that we're going to have safe streets and reliable public safety because our firefighters and our police officers are well equipped and well funded. And we can ensure that our tax environment is stable. You're not going to come here and get taxes raised on you. You're not going to come here with massive millages because we've been able to stabilize our operations and cauterize the deficits. That's put us into a position today that we can be competitive for the jobs of the future. So we're working with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation on site readiness grant. If you look over off 24th and Dove Street, we've cleared 23 acres and done every due diligence we've needed to make sure that that site was shovel ready. That we can go to companies and say, you can build your 150,000 square foot manufacturing facility right now, the site's ready. And it's already paying off. Frito-Lay is building a distribution center there right now. And right now we have another proposal with the MEDC to build 2 more plants in that development. Also, we want to make sure that we're competitive on our workforce. I say we used to chase jobs, now we chase workers. There's a talent shortage across the state of Michigan. And we need to win the talent attraction game. Meaning everyone's competing for workers, and we want talented workers, and we want them here in the city of Port Huron. We need to make sure that we offer quality public schools. We need to make sure that we offer a beautiful and vibrant downtown, quality, extensive place.
You're going to answer every question that
right.
they asked.
I'll get to this.
Okay.
The city's role.
Because you can filibuster this thing.
All right, the city's role, to get the question answered, the city's role is we create an environment for free people, free enterprise to do what they do best, and that's create prosperity, which government cannot deliver.
So some of the questions that were asked, okay, so again, looking at, how do we attract talent? And I know we sit in a lot of meetings where we talk about, is it possible to increase population and, what assets do we have? But it also brings certainly some new challenges. So like as an example, one of the questions, Barbara Payton had asked a question about accessibility and safety of bike lanes. And I was joking with James a couple weeks ago when I went down Lakeshore, and there's this nice bike lane down Lakeshore and like a really 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And I said, are you trying to make money on me right now to pay for this bike lane? But certainly it's a safety thing. So are there any plans? But then I saw, cars parked, in the bike lane, and certainly that's a safety issue if somebody's riding their bike. What is the city looking to do to help make sure that those assets are accessible, maybe, and also from folks with maybe disabilities as well? But what are there further things that can be done to create safety and more for those types of environments? So
the bike lanes, you just can't look at we're putting in bike lanes. Okay, it's part of a broader strategy. A broader strategy is to attract people. And if you want to attract people to our community, we need to look at diversity. We need to make Port Huron the most diverse and welcoming community in the state of Michigan. Whether that's the LGBTQ community, whether that's those with disabilities, whether that's those who are coming here to build a new life, immigration. A key to our economic success is going to be a viable economic immigration program. People who need the visas, the doctors, the engineers to come here. What we're trying to do is we're not just investing in bike lanes and redeveloping better streets, more complete streets. We're also investing hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on ADA accessibility sidewalks. I want to make sure that you can take a wheelchair and go from one end of the city to the other end of the city without facing barriers. And so it's not just looking at bike lanes, but it's also looking at accessibility as a whole and how do we become a more inclusive community. If you look back to the 1890s, Port Huron had more immigrants flowing through it than Ellis Island. And look what that did to our community. Not only do we have racial diversity, but we have significant ethnic diversities in our neighborhoods. We have Germantown, we have the Polish neighborhood, we have the Hispanic neighborhood. That has made our community richer. And so history can teach us a lesson. The key to growth is diversity, inclusion, and bike lanes are just a single part of a broader strategy to do that.
So when you're looking at, so now you're bringing, I just had a flashback to PTSD of a Marysville City Council meeting where we made national news because one of the candidates said that Marysville was for white people. Yeah, that happened. Yeah. And certainly it's an issue that I guess is not really bubbled up as much as it has over the last 10 years. But how do you address that, with the communities around? So when you're dealing with diversity, equity, inclusion in those conversations and how we do things as a municipality, how we do things in our school districts, how do we attract people to want to serve in public office today as well? I mean, that was one of the other things too. I'm going to ask you to kind of update, the Supreme Court case that was a big news story last year. But I guess how concerned are you when you look at city council in Port Huron? How nervous are you that we're going to be able to attract thoughtful, people that share that vision of what we need to be successful here?
I'll take it in two parts before we get to the public officials and serving. We have to look at culture, right? So in the city of Port Huron, 2 to 3 years before the state legislature expanded Elliott Larson, I signed the administrative directive expanding the license protections for the LGBT community within our city policies. We did that years before it became codified in state law. That was to send a clear message. We created the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Office within our Community Development Department because we have resources that weren't getting spent, whether it was emergency home repair funds for the elderly or roof grants for the low income or housing vouchers for those who needed it. And you can look across the community and say, well, the need just wasn't there. I don't buy that. I think it's because people didn't know about the resource and they didn't have access to the resource. We also want to increase diversity within our candidate pool for hiring. I want to ensure that the community looks like the people who are serving it. And so we are now going to the churches, going to the community picnics with our job boards, with our community, with our CBG fund program pamphlets and how to enroll so we can go to where the people are. Because the fact is, the big white building on the water is a little intimidating. And I find it highly unlikely that someone's just going to roam the building looking for the right office where they can get some help for grandma or get some help from themselves. And so we need to go to where the people are. And I'm really proud of the efforts we've made in the last 2 or 3 years with DEI, ensuring that it's not about equal outcomes. We're going to all end up in different places. It's about equal opportunity to the resources that this community has to offer. Serving in public service, it's a really difficult time right now. I say you need thick skin in this job. I've been doing this for 17 years. Whatever faults you have, people are going to take notice. Whatever strengths you have, you're going to need them. You're going to need them. I look at our mayor and council today. They take a lot of incoming fire. The Planning Commission takes incoming fire. The ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, takes incoming fire. You have to have a servant's heart to do what's best for the community. You come, you take the grenades, but at the end of the day, you know that you are doing this for your kids, for your family, and for your neighbors. I have been blessed that for the last 10 years, I have had a mayor who is laser focused on not making the right political decisions. No one has ever asked me on my council, what's the best political decisions? Where's the political winds going? They asked me, James, deliver us the best policy solutions so that we can make the right decisions. And so we have to thank the mayor and council we have today for being focused on policy and not politics. I believe there's a lot of good people in this city. You know, you go on social media and you read the crazies. But then I walk to the grocery store, and then I walk to my park, and I have Lucy and Annie swinging on the park, making small talk with another dad or another family in that area. You look at the amount of volunteerism we have in this community. Look at what's going on at Mid-City Nutrition. Look what's going on at Suns and the Athletic Factory. People who are taking back their city block by block by block. As the city, we want to support them. So there are good people here. This is a community that is a loving community, that is a welcoming community. And I think that's why we have a deep bench of talent in this city to serve.
So just to kind of circle back on this a little bit, I see Tori Ferris, a local attorney who argued your case in front of the Supreme Court. Let's get a round of applause for our very own making an argument in D.C. How important is it to you, not maybe necessarily just, you could say maybe from a personal basis, but what do you see as, if maybe take a second and explain the basis for what the case is,
yeah.
But briefly if you could do that, and then just share what the consequences are of that decision.
Yeah, so I've had a Facebook account since I was in college. I travel all over the country speaking. I've been a city manager. I talk to a lot of colleges, a lot of conventions I speak at. So Facebook capped you out at 5,000 friends, and you can define friend pretty broad, but about 5,000 friends. I was quickly reaching that mark, and if you remember, when Facebook first started, they didn't have pages. So your local coffee shop would create an account, and the local grocery store would create an account, and you would go add as a friend your coffee shop and add as a friend your grocery store. Well, Facebook realized that this doesn't really fit a public figure or a public official, which are different, or a store. And so it's somewhere between 2011 and 2012, they allowed a one-time conversion. You can convert your personal Facebook account into a page so you wouldn't have that cap. And so that's what I did. And most of you probably followed my Facebook page. It's all of my dogs, the raccoons in my backyard, photos of Lucy, of my dinner. I'm a big foodie. I like to go around town, and when I get a really killer sandwich from Casey's, I take a picture of it, hence why I'm probably chubbier today than I was in 2014. It was just my personal Facebook account. During COVID, I had an individual post. All I can remember is like 3 smiley faces. Now, I received security briefings, and I received privileged information that is not available to the general public. So I knew this individual was somebody who had gone to jail repeatedly for violating personal protective orders and contempt of court and stalking and harassing individuals within our city. I believe he was actually incarcerated at the time. So based on that, not what he posted, on what he said, I blocked him because I don't want someone like that seeing pictures of my kids or my wife. This individual is the cellmate of the man who shot and killed one of my employees and then shot another one. So this is kind of the individual we're dealing with. He's still incarcerated this day for assault. I believe public officials have a right to a private life. And the good news is a federal judge agreed as well. And then they appealed it, and the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed as well, that that was my personal page and we have a right to privacy. We are at the Supreme Court not because I lost. We're at the Supreme Court because I won in federal court and I won in the Court of Appeals. And I believe the Supreme Court took up our case to make it the law of the land, which I appreciate that clarity. And on behalf, I think, of like 600,000 public officials in the United States, it's important. Actually, is it 23 million? There's a lot of public officials in the United States. So what is a public official? Is it a police officer? Is it a firefighter? If a school teacher goes home and says, rough day at work, the kids were crazy, can you just go on there and trash them and stalk them? So this is a question that needs to be answered, that has profound impacts on public officials across the state. So it's really not about James Freed. It's about teachers, police officers, firefighters, city managers, what they can do on social media. So I'm glad the Supreme Court took it up. It was very interesting going to the Supreme Court. It's not often that you get hauled in a Tahoe before a big white, marble building, but check it off the bucket list. So we'll find out.
Talking about like attracting talent, bringing people here, there were a couple of questions, a couple of different folks were referencing the affordable housing more specifically. So maybe if you could, share some of your concerns as it relates to affordable housing in Port Huron, and then also, what are the strategies and long-term plans to try and alleviate some of those problems?
Okay, so this is a competition. So we are competing with every other city in the state of Michigan. We're competing with Ohio, Indiana, and I intend to win. Okay, I'm out to win. Every day we wake up, we're going to win the growth competition. Our economy is growing so fast, and our city is growing at a rapid rate in which such investment, we've now had $500 million, $500 million of new investment in the last 5 years. We created 2,000 new jobs. Right now, I have about 300 unfilled jobs sitting in the Port Huron Industrial Park. We need people. People need a place to live. And when they find a place to live, they need childcare. If we're going to win the economic development game, we need to address housing and childcare, and we need to do it sooner than later. And so, affordable housing. Right now, we have a housing shortage in the state, in the city, and in the state of Michigan. In just the last 12 months, 400 units of affordable housing have been taken offline. It's meaning that they got a Michigan grant or a state grant to build affordable housing 20 years ago. The 20 years is up, so therefore the property has no more restrictions. So they essentially send a letter to the people who are at these subsidized rates saying, your rent was going from $750 to $1,500 starting next month, and if you don't like it, you can move out. So they did. They have no place to go. And so we can't just look at, the condos in the water, the lofts downtown. We have to onboard workforce housing. Because if not, it will stifle our economic growth. Meaning we won't be able to grow at the rate that our industries and our private sector desires because they have no place to live. So we're working with the state of Michigan through MISHDA, our housing authority at the state. We have now announced, which should be coming online for construction at the corner of Lincoln and Erie, a $14 million investment in a 4-story mid-rise close to downtown, walkable to downtown. We've made some exemptions to our zoning to make sure that, not everyone there needs a 2-car parking lot. We don't need 100 parking spots for 36 units. It's crazy. So we're looking at our zoning and our planning department requirements to make sure that we remove barriers to make sure that these developments can come online. We want to be a walkable community so you can live in this new development, work at McLaren, hang out downtown, all and never have to get on a bus or get on a car. That's important. We're still working on the Connor Street site. I had a development meeting just the other day in New York City with a developer looking at the Connor Street site to build a 60-unit mid-rise there of workforce housing. We have to do it sooner than later, but it also has to be an all-of-the-above approach, meaning we have some units that are affordable housing right now that you have someone who would probably go to a higher-end unit if it was available. So we can't just focus on workforce housing. It is important that we bring on the higher-end lofts and condos and homes as well, because it's a great magical game of musical chairs. One person moves out, another person can move in. And so how do we turn up the music on the musical chair game? That's going to take incentives. It's going to take some work with the state of Michigan. It's going to take working with our current property owners of who wants to sell, who's ready to develop. Also working with our employers. McLaren was a real team player in getting this development off the ground. Working with the developer, letting them see their employee census information of who could possibly want to work, rent and live there. So it's very important. The next issue is going to be childcare. So during COVID, we lost 800 slots of childcare in St. Clair County. So that could be like a legitimate full-size daycare center. You drop your kid off, it's got its own building. Or that could be, the lady who just brought in 2 kids and watched after school or watched during the day. We've lost those because of COVID, and we never onboard them again. So we have people right now who would join the workforce, but it's not cost effective to go back to work when childcare is so expensive or so limited. So we have to, and that's not a problem that city government can solve, right? So that's why we have to work with the public and private partnership on coming to solutions for that. If you look at, we have a group in the county called Blue Meets Green. Blue Meets Green started way back in the day before I got here, and it was the public leaders, the civic leaders, the nonprofits, the CEOs. They all got in a room together, and they said, okay, a lifeboat's not coming to save our city. No one's coming to save us. Everyone's going to drown all over the state. So we got to figure this out ourselves. So they now work together. So when we have an investor come into town, we'll have the CEO of the hospital there, we'll have the SC4 president there, we'll have the EDA there, we'll have the mayor there, we'll have private industry there, all working together saying, how can we make this happen? So more to come on the childcare, whether that means expanding seasonal childcare facilities the city has now, working with the YMCA. Look how great our YMCA is doing around the county. Look what they did at Eddy Elementary School, bringing on, I think, like 136 childcare slots. That's a unique model in the state of Michigan that not only the state is looking at, but nonprofits and philanthropy across the state are looking at as well. How do we duplicate that success and duplicate it here in Port Huron, and how do we do it sooner than later? Because eventually, the housing shortage and the childcare shortage will stifle our economic growth.
So looking at some of the other challenges that that can face a community, certainly there's a question about addiction and recovery in Port Huron, and how we've adapted, or things that we've put in place to help address those issues. I guess the question is what is your view, on the role of community-based organizations, and what, if any, is the city's role in supporting these organizations? What are your thoughts on that?
So when I became city manager, I do ride-alongs with the police department and the fire department. So I hop on the trucks, stay at the fire hall for 12, 13 hours to kind of get the feel of it. My first run was to a triplex on Court Street, and it was an overdose. A young lady had overdosed, and I remember the firefighters said, I'm staying back, right? I don't want to get involved. I'm not a firefighter. I'm just there to observe. The firefighters walked in. They begin assessing the situation and beginning the first response. She's blue. She's dead. She's completely dead. So they begin the resuscitation efforts. And literally, I thought they're putting on a show for the family because this girl's clearly dead. She's blue. I mean, I thought this is over. We had Narcan at the time, and we were able to inject that individual with Narcan. 4.5 minutes later, I watched that young lady walk out of the house carrying a blanket into the EMS. Saved a life. Every single one of us has been touched by the opioid epidemic and some type of substance abuse. We all have a family. We all have a close friend. And based on what happened in the last 10 to 15 years in this country, we've all lost somebody. We've all been to a funeral. And so this is a very important issue within our community. We have a group in the city called Blue Water, BW Rock, and they're here with us today. I had a chance to go speak to their organization because I want to be an inclusive community, and I need workers. And so it occurred to us that when you apply for the city of Port Huron, you had to check, do you have a criminal history? Check. Well, your application goes in the trash. Well, that's not effective. That's how you get talented people. And so I signed an administrative directive dropping the box. We no longer ask about your criminal record because I believe people who have criminal convictions, we don't give out lifetime sentences. You did something stupid in 2003, it doesn't mean you never work again. And so I wanted to go meet with the people at BW Rock. They're in the recovery community. So these are people who had substance abuse issues, whether that was drugs or alcohol, and they're clean. They're rebuilding their lives. And so I told them, I said, hey, I want you to come work for us. I have these jobs, and I have these capable people in the same city. There's clearly a nexus here that needs to be made. These are talented people. They have value, and we need them. After the event, I was out in the parking lot, and an individual came up to me, a young man, and he was telling me, he's like, hey, you serious about all that? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, well, what do you got? He's like, I was hopped on opioids. And He said my neighbor had surgery, little old lady across the street had surgery, and I saw her leave the house for the day, so I went over and pulled open the back door and helped myself to some of her pills. Got caught. Ring doorbell apparently caught him, and he got caught. Clean ever since. Got through recovery, but he's got a breaking and entering conviction on his record. And he looked at me and he said to me, he's like, "So, do you think there's a place for me in the city?" And I sat there as city manager, a soft voice with a daunting question. What he was asking me was, as city manager, do you believe I have value in this community? Do you believe my life matters? I know grace because I've needed it. I know forgiveness because I've received it when I didn't deserve it. Every time that question is answered, we have a collective community have to say, yes, you have value here. Your life is important. We are a community of second chances. We want you to be a part of our community. So when we talk about inclusion, we also have to talk about the recovery community. You can't just pie it all out to different groups. The recovery community must be focused in the inclusion. So the city of Port Huron, the mayor and council received this ARP money, and we invested it in a lot of things trying to get out of COVID. One of the big portions was during COVID was substance abuse was on the rise. And so you have groups like BW Rock and Dry Dock, which are doing innovative programs to literally save people's lives. And we have made it a priority of funding those groups. We have some opioid settlement dollars coming. We have steered that to these recovery groups as well to make sure that there's sustainable funding models. So the recovery hit us pretty fast and pretty hard, and no one knew how to handle it. The opioid epidemic did, but the recovery community is just, they emerged out of nowhere. Like this whole model of how BW Rock's doing it. So the state is slow. The bureaucracy in Lansing is slow and it lags behind. They're always 2 years behind an emerging issue. So we need to bridge the funding gaps for these groups that are doing life-saving work until Lansing figures out a sustainable funding system, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or insurance coverage, to cover these services. So we're providing them a lifeboat so that this important work doesn't stop. The recovery community, it's not about just saving lives. Again, it's about economic growth and being an inclusive community. We want them here. They have value. They are God-given children, and we want them to be a part of this community in its future. That's my position.
All right, so I'm going to lighten it up a little bit.
Right.
Maybe not so much that you and I have had many conversations about this, but we've been very fortunate over the last decade since you've been here. I think you've seen it. A lot of great investments have been made throughout St. Clair County, but specifically to Port Huron. And, certainly running a business, this is a Chamber of Commerce event, right? Running a business can be, it's dicey. Yeah. When you're an entrepreneur, the success rates, certainly there are a lot of headwinds against you that you have to overcome. What are your thoughts, though? Because I've seen and I hear comments about what is the city going to do, to help, us be more successful? And I guess I'm just curious, what, if you're setting expectations for somebody, that wants to open or start a business, what would you say to them that they could expect from the city? As part of a partnership, but also, so that there's not any unrealistic expectations. Well,
when we have issues in business growth and business development, one thing that has never been said to me, and I've never had a business owner, I've never had a company, I've never had a developer, no one has ever come to me and says, "James, give me more government. Give me more government. Blow the government up, grow the government, create more programs, and then tax us for it. That's what we need." No one has ever come to that. So big government is not the solution to some problem that free markets and free enterprise can solve. And so what the city will do is ensure that we have safe streets, that your customers are not getting mugged, that they have good streets to drive on, that they have safe sidewalks to drive on. We'll make sure that if there's an issue, we have first response to get there and solve it. But it's important for the business community to work amongst themselves to develop collaborations. I think the Blue Water Chamber, what they do throughout our entire region, is critically important to economic growth. I also think making sure that we promote the area, so we work with the CVB, we work with the Economic Development Alliance, also providing tax relief when necessary for new development. So if you look at what we've done to support retail, is half these retail locations didn't exist 10 years ago because they were dilapidated and obsolete. We have done Oprah districts, neighborhood improvement zones. Neighborhood improvement zones of what's led to the growth of lofts downtown. The Oprah districts, which allows us to provide tax relief for up to 12 years, is what allowed developers to go in and rehab these old buildings. Look at the building we're sitting in now. It's a mixed use. It has residential, it has a theater, it has 2 commercial spots out front. $200,000 from the state of Michigan. I have received a 9-year tax abatement from the city of Port Huron. So less government, free enterprise and free people, and it will work. But big growing government, creating some government program that feels good. I see a lot of proposals from staff and from outside the city. Like, here's a program. It sounds good. The intentions are good. But when government grows, it never goes as planned. And big government is not the solution to the problem. Less government is, and more restrictive government. With that, I would say this: our permitting process, working with the city to get your inspections done, to get open. We've made marked improvement on that in the last just 5 years. We need to make a lot of marked improvement, and we still have a lot more to go. I want to be the most pro-growth city in the state of Michigan and in the region. If you want to come here and open a business, that working with City Hall, it's not like we're there to say, nope, not going to happen. We want to make sure that we work with you, that we usher you through the process in a timely fashion, and make sure that we get those things done in a timely fashion, because that's the competition. If we can move quicker than Sterling Heights, if we can move quicker than Marysville, if we can move quicker than Bel Air, we will win that attraction game.
So this is a very specific question as it relates to some of that, like you're talking about being able to increase access. Huron Avenue, is that a MDOT controlled decisions based on what we can do with that street, or is it something that the city has some leverage to be able to make some decisions there?
So at the end of the day, MDOT has the ultimate decision, but we have done study after study on the Huron Ave. One idea was moving the state route to 10th Street, diverting all that traffic. Well, if you look at the amount of traffic that Huron Ave gets, if you tell the local business owner, hey, we want to cut that traffic down to just a third of what it is that drives by your business every day, that's not a viable solution. We have a challenge here that most other cities don't have, is not only the traffic count, but also we have the bascule bridges, the Military Street bridges, and stacking. So if you're in downtown in the summertime and that bascule bridge goes up on a July afternoon, you will get traffic stacking pretty much all the way to McMorran, and if not past McMorran, and we have 2 lanes. Now just imagine if we only had 1 lane of traffic downtown and that bascule bridge went up. You would take that stacking and double the distance. The issue becomes the amount of cycles it would take from the traffic lights to get that traffic through the city. It would be a bottleneck, and people would just avoid downtown. And so there's been studies out there over and over again. I think one of the areas for growth in downtown is going to have to be enhanced crosswalks. So we need to make sure that our crosswalks are safe for those with disabilities as well. So if you look right on Erie Street between the Field House and SC4, we have just installed new advanced crosswalks for those with visual and hearing disabilities at that crosswalk. Those will go live, I think, by the end of the month, if they're not already live as well. Because there's a lot of students at SC4 that have visibility issues. And we need to make sure they can cross that very busy road safely. I think we need to work with MDOT during this reconstruction period, whenever that ends up being, to make sure that we enhance the crosswalks and enhance ADA accessibility in the downtown.
So this is I guess a little bit more of just a reflective question that I was kind of curious. It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's flown by pretty quick. And I mean, some days probably seem a little bit longer than others.
Yeah.
But when you look at your time here, and I guess what are what's one thing? Maybe if there's one thing or 2 things that I guess that surprised you, and then also when you look back at just during that time, like what are you most proud of that you've been able to kind of help handle that you think is going to be a legacy that you're most proud of?
Well, I look back at my 10 years here. It has been the greatest honor of my life. I mean, I wake up every day, I don't go to work. I love what I do. When I'm on vacation, my wife's like, put your phone down. I'm like, no, I would rather be on my phone than at the Magic Kingdom with that god-awful ride. So it's like, I love my job.
I warned you about going
Yeah,
there.
I hate the Magic Kingdom. I love what I do. I love the people I serve. It's like we're all friends here, friends and neighbors. I love going downtown. I love being with the people I serve. I was raised here. I went to Port Huron schools. I didn't have a lot of money growing up, but I never knew it because I had a lot of opportunity. At 23 years old, I was one of the youngest city managers in U.S. history. And I went to Port Huron schools. And I was in the poverty line. We were in poverty, below the poverty line. I was a free and reduced lunch kid. Now, who would have known that a free and reduced lunch kid at Port Huron schools could grow up and become one of the youngest city managers in U.S. history? That's an American story. That's a Port Huron story. So when I had the opportunity to come back and make sure that ladder was still there for the next kid to climb up, I was like, we're going. we're going home, and we're going to raise our family here. And we love where we live here, we work here, but my 2 little girls love going to our parks. I'm a selfish guy when it comes to parks and recreation. We've invested a lot of parks and recreation about the same time Lucy was born. It's a grand conspiracy, but I love taking my kids to these brand new parks. I love going to, it's kind of sad you go to a brand new park and I'm like, a family's playing there. Where are you from? St. Clair, Marysville. So I have like these recreation refugees coming here to enjoy our parks, which we're glad about. I think my most proudest moment is I can't take credit for anything. My proudest moment is we've done things together. James Freed, the mayor and council, the city, we've done nothing on our own. It was a collective working group with the public, the private sector, philanthropy to get things done. I think the culture of collaboration, that's what I'm most proud of, and the ability to tackle big challenges. You look at all across the state of Michigan and what they're dealing with, and it's like, oh, we dealt with that 5 years ago. We dealt with that 7 years ago. And so being proactive, taking on the difficult decisions, making sure that, I call it for the next generation. We do these things for the next generation. I had to come in and I inherited a mess that the previous generation didn't take care of or didn't fund. There's no way that I'm going to leave Lucy and Annie and your kids with that same challenge. We're going to work together. We're going to tackle big challenges. We don't care about the politics. We care about good policy, and that's what I'm most proud of.
Who here has been to James's office? And has anybody been in there? Yeah. Okay.
You need tighter security.
Yeah, you do. And I one time he was, I know he said he works every day, but there was a day he wasn't, and I got to sneak in, put my foot up on the desk, took my picture, talking on his phone with that great view. So I was a little bit surprised when you were like, you know what? I don't need this. Like, this is the view for somebody that's paying taxes in our community. And last year, the citizens authorized the city to move forward on a sale for the municipal building. Would you just, I guess, walk everybody through that a little bit and maybe just kind of where's that stand right now, and is that still something that's on your to-do list? It's
something the Times Herald covered back, I think it was like 6 months after I got here. You show up and it's like, oh, there's City Hall, it's beautiful. Then I'm in my office looking at the water view, and I'm like, this is like Port Huron's greatest asset, is this waterfront and this view. The assets of a community should be leveraged to benefit its people, not government. So when we have this beautiful building that we could rehab to provide housing, to address the housing shortage, and also tax the heck out of it to provide revenue to fund services for the city, it just makes sense to take that natural asset and leverage it back towards serving the city and its citizens. And so, but selling a building is saying you want to sell a building and selling a building are two different challenges. One, you got to find a buyer, which I think we got two. Two, you got to find an exit strategy. So we use about 75,000 square feet of office space. Right now, to build office space is somewhere between 450 and 550 square feet. So to build a brand new city hall would cost millions and millions and millions of dollars that I would get a brand new building, but we would still be in debt to pay it off. Well, that doesn't make sense either, to sell a building only to go in debt to pay for another building. I believe that there are several buildings in existence today around the city that can house City Hall with a couple $1 million in rehab. Now, everyone's asking, well, which building is that? What buildings are you looking at? Well, I'm not a real estate mogul, but I do understand that if you're trying to get a good deal on a building, don't tell them this is where we want to go at a public town hall. We're working with people who own these buildings. We're trying to be kind of coy of like, we kind of want to move in your building, but we're not desperate. And so it's just like buying a house. You want to have some business acumen in how you do it. So there is a couple. There's about 3 that really make sense, meaning the rehabilitation. And if you take a used building and bring it to current building and ADA accessibility standards, it's going to be a couple $1 million. But if we can sell City Hall for a couple $1 million, get it on the tax rolls generating $200,000 and some a year, then it provides you a revenue stream that makes sense to moving City Hall to a more appropriate site. I also think downtown Port Huron on the waterfront, it's several blocks out of the way. The vast majority of our citizens live south of the Black River, an Old Town neighborhood. So I would like to take City Hall and move it to within walking distance to the largest amount of our population. I think City Hall should be just a walk away. So we're looking at that. So, okay. So you, in talking about, moving the, City Hall, 10 years, we've joked
every once in a while you're like, man, just wait until I run for governor. Like, how much of that is a joke, and like how much of it is actual? Like, you're sitting across the table from your wife and you're going, listen, make sure I don't screw up much in the next 2 years, so that I might be able to do this if this is a possibility.
I have no intention I've had no intentions of running for office. It is true. I go around the state. I travel a lot. It is a question that I'm getting. I'm getting from people in Detroit and in Lansing. What are your future ambitions? Are you going to run for office? You have to look at why they would ask that question. It's a testament to the transformation of the city. Not every city in our state has made that transformation from a core Michigan community that is struggling with unfunded liabilities and saddled with the unfinished business of the past to a viable and growing community with opportunity and prosperity for its residents in the future. The outlook and the trajectory has changed. So I understand that question and why it's being asked, and that's a testament to the hard work of a collective group of people, not just me. But it is not my intention to ever seek office. Will I rule it out right now? No, I'm not. It's not a question. It's not something I can rule out. I can't tell you right now I'm not going to do it. But it's not something I'm seeking, and it's not my intention. My focus is on making sure that Lucy and Annie can walk down safe streets to their school, and making sure that there's a viable downtown that we can go to on the weekends, and making sure that I can get to my beach on my golf cart as fast as possible. That's my focus right now, and doing a good job. So that is not my intention.
I feel like Jim Harbaugh just answered that question for him. I don't know.
No.
I'm joking. No, but when you look at, you talk about your daughters and your family, and I agree, like being in this area, there really isn't any other place in the state that I've been that I would rather be either. But you mentioned I didn't do this on my own. This is a lot of collaboration with all the people that have some skin in the game. All of these people here have skin in the game. People that maybe are going to watch this back later on, that are business people, that are stakeholders. I guess I would ask you, what would you ask them to do that you feel like is really imperative to helping achieve these objectives that really are pretty clear in front of us?
Continue showing the courage to take risk. If you look at what has made downtown great, it was, you look at Marcia Haynes building a loft, the Witts family redeveloping buildings. I remember when the Witts bought the Benz building and they put, I think it was 12 units there. I was like, you're never going to lease these out. I remember sitting in downtown outside Fuel, and there was just boarded up windows. Larry Jones having the courage. Jeff Payton building the Vintage brick by brick by his own hand. Steve Fernandez investing millions into a grocery store and a mixed use right in our downtown. It's the courage of private enterprise to take risk, to believe in our people. I don't want to be late coming to the game, but I showed up in 2014 and I believed in the community. But there were a lot of people here well before that investing their dollars because they believed well before that. They believed in the community, they believed in the grit in our people, and they believed in the future of Port Huron. And so it's to those people who came first. We have to continue showing the courage that they showed to transform this community. We have to come behind them and support them in any way possible. Remove roadblocks, support them, help them to keep showing the courage to invest and grow our city.
So if somebody wants to, like when I look at like the trail system, the Southside development that's taking place, and I mean, you're doing, some coffees around town, to kind of interact again, get feedback from citizens, right? What things do you think, what are some things that might surprise some people in this room that maybe have taken place that they may not know about?
Oh, I think just the level of attraction and development going on in South Park and the south side of the community. South Park and the south side of the community are the most prime redevelopment areas in the city. And what I mean by that is we don't have a lot of green space. We're a built-out community. So our focus is on redevelopment, which is a lot more challenging than just building on an open green field. So redevelopment is key. If you look at what the mayor and council have done in the last year, they made it their priority is on we want to steer development to South Park and to the south side. So the mayor and council, in one of the fastest, most rapid times in the Michigan of doing this, we created a neighborhood improvement authority. We did that in less than a year. Not only did they create it, but we now have appointed a board, the chairman, Joe Bixler, is here, to look at creating a capital improvement plan for South Park and for the south side. If you look at the development going down there, the Walker brothers are building a multi-million-dollar harbor, restaurant, and commercial site down there. But if you look at the enhancements at even city limits, it's a beautiful stage and outdoor venue. Connor McCormick Pub is open, all redone. It's beautiful. we have a lot of redevelopment possibilities down there. I see South Park and South Port Huron as the most advantageous for economic growth and expansion, meaning where you are versus what it could be in short order is the largest delta difference. It's most ripe for investment. And we're having a lot of people, a lot of developers take interest in that area of the city. And that's really our focus.
Well, believe it or not, we're almost to an hour, so I'm going to be respectful of everybody's time here. But I do want to give you a few minutes, just to maybe spend it, the last little bit. If there's anything that that I've not covered with you, I know you had some you wanted a question about the energy initiatives on the state level, how that might impact Port Huron. But are there some things that you'd like just in closing that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean we're constantly, you have to flag. Part of the one of the issues I have to focus on most is my job is flagging emerging issues, right? So you have to look out. I meet with all my division heads and department heads. The division heads are more field operations, and I want to pull them in. And I ask them a couple questions like, what's going well? What's going bad? What can I do to make things go better? But moreover, what is on your radar in the next 12 months and in the next 3 to 5 years that should be on my radar? We have to flag emerging issues before they become crises. That's really your opportunity cost is when you wait, and then the challenges and the consequences are much more difficult. And so I look at the energy bill that was just passed by the House and Senate. I have real concerns with that. It's a great idea and it's very noble, but a go-it-alone strategy for the state of Michigan when no one else around us is doing that, that means we already have some of the highest energy costs in the country. And now we're not competing with just India and China. We're competing with Indiana, Ohio, and Tennessee. And so when we're trying to attract that advanced manufacturing, second to labor, energy costs are one of the highest costs for production. And so when they pull out their pro forma, and they literally, I have to send what's called a request for proposal from the MEDC. We have a company, they want to build a $150,000 manufacturing plant. This is kind of what they do. Send your site, send the cost of the land, send a listing of your utility rates and your gas rates. So when you plug that into their little Excel pro forma, and then you put that Excel pro forma next to an Ohio site and a Tennessee site, we are a competitive disadvantage. And so I think it's noble and I think it's honorable, but it has to be a national strategy, not a Michigan go-it-alone strategy. I think we're going to have some real repercussions there on attraction and development in the next 12 to 24 months. I think some projects that are in the docket around the state may not come to fruition because of it. So I have real concerns with that. I also want to make sure that we have to look at infrastructure. The state has not really truly adopted a sustainable funding model. All the bonds and all the fee increases the last couple of years, that goes to MDOT highways and trunk lines. That doesn't trickle down to local dollars. That doesn't come down to Court Street. That doesn't come down to Armour Street. That stays at the state. So we have like 240 miles of local roads that we need to be able to find a funding strategy. And when those roads need reconstruction, we need to find out how we build them better and make sure we build them for complete streets. If you look at, one of the criticisms we get are your streets are overbuilt. They're not wrong, but I can't afford to rip it out and rebuild it. But we need to have a very strategic capital improvement plan that factors in what are the true costs of infrastructure, not only in the here's how much it costs to replace that. You look at Gratiot Ave, $6 million, $7 million to redo Gratiot Ave. But what's the real cost over the 30-year lifespan of that road for maintaining that much pavement and the way that's laid out? We have to look at the lifespan of the asset, depreciate that, and find a sustainable development model on that. Those are things I'm flagging. But in closing, you got one more?
You actually, there's one road that I'm really concerned about, and it's the canal.
Yeah.
I actually have an idea for you, buddy. I think what we should do is we should have a toll that fires on the bridge when you go through and you get charged for it, so we can keep that thing open. But man, how often do you get that question?
Yeah.
But I certainly think that that's certainly one that voters would.
Everyone has an idea. I've had contractors and companies come with their ideas. I had one guy come in with this $3 million proposal. This is like a couple of years ago. It was like a giant balloon that when the waves kicked up, it would inflate and block the sand from coming up. It'd be about 3.1 million. And it looked really good. I was like, that's great. How confident are you this is going to work? He's like, I'm 100% confident. I was like, that's great. I said, in our contract, we're going to put a reimbursement clause in, so if it doesn't work, you have to pay back the $3 million. He's like, well, we can't do that. Well, if you're so confident. So we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. The simplest answer is, You extend a jetty a mile out, you'll be dredging a mile out. It's in a particular position within the sand cycle, which is a whole science on sand cycle and sand replacement, that dredging is the best option. I will say, being good collaborators and more importantly, good neighbors really does pay off. If you remember back in the 90s, like Kimball Township, Port Huron Township, and the city of Port Huron, we were literally amassing tanks on our borders, prepared to go to war. That's just what it was. But we get along great with the townships now, and they've come to the table to help fund the dredging. Now, $15,000 from each, that's $30,000 a year. That covers about half of the dredging cost. And so having that relationship, the partnership, we can just go up to Fort Gratiot and say, hey, you've got a bunch of parcels on the river. We got a bunch of parcels on the river. This is a collective issue in working for a solution. I do believe we found a sustainable funding mechanism, and it's really hit or miss. Some years we dredge once. 2 years ago, we dredged on Wednesday and Thursday. The north wind came on Friday and Saturday, and they were back dredging on Monday. The pile wasn't even hauled away yet. I mean, so it's really hit or miss with the season. I do have an Excel spreadsheet breaking down the annual cost. I'll upload that to www.porthuron.org/opengovernment. Porthuron.org/opengovernment is our transparency initiative. It has every financial record, report, anything you can imagine on there is out there for the public to read and to understand. We believe that transparency is the key to trust and to building buy-in, when people know, when they know where the money's going, when they know what's actually happening. So visit that website, see all that data, and I'll be sure to upload that spreadsheet.
Thanks, James. Well, listen, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, I just want to say thank you for your time. This guy, he does know what he's talking about, and it's really nice to have an opportunity for you to share some of these things. I would encourage all of you, if you do want to reach out to James, it's not hard to do. He's not hard to find. He talks to everybody. I mean, we've had a great relationship over the last 10 years, and a lot of things that we try to do to move forward. And it may not always be the answer that you want to hear, or but it's definitely going to be straightforward, and it's going to be something that is going to make sense, I think. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I'd love to get a round of applause for James for today. Thanks.
I also want to thank all of you. Thank you for submitting your questions. Thank you for coming. When you have your citizens are engaged and at the table, it really kind of encourages you. Having you all here today encourages me, like, yeah, we're all in this together. Let's continue the struggle and let's fight through this. On behalf of my wife and my family, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this community, to serve you. It is without question the greatest honor of my life. I don't take it lightly. I take it very seriously, and I will continue to work hard to deliver results for your families and your children's future. Thank you.
Thank you.